first meeting of the technology group. It looks like a familiar gathering of software people. So just a bit of a background. As you know, I formed the Restart Sailing group, well, probably beginning of March, after very much depressing time of cancelling a lot of events that we're involved with. So we've pretty much got an event every other week going on. So ended up in that depressing state of cancelling them, and I think we got Will joining us, and doing refunds. But working with the clubs and classes, everyone's getting quite worried. So we thought, well, perhaps we could work together, and that's how Restart Sailing came together, from probably a handful of clubs and classes, now up to, well, 1,600 on the Facebook group. But probably, if you look at these working groups, probably about 100 clubs and classes and the likes of the trade working together, which is great. Perhaps we do a bit of a who's who first, so we know who's on the call and what our sort of background and particular expertise. So Peter, you're on the left here, I see. Do you want to kick off?
Okay, I'm not on the left here, but never mind.
We're on the left of my screen. Yes.
I'm the author and proprietor of Hal's Race Results and Healthsale, basically. So my interest has always been on providing scoring software to clubs more than anything else.
Okay, thank you. And Jeremy, you're next on my left.
Yes, good afternoon all. Jeremy Pocock, I represent Sailing Club Manager. We provide a solution for clubs and class associations as a sort of general club and class association management solution, from membership, birthing, events, etc. We have about 150 clubs now using the service in most countries in the world, or most continents anyway. All continents, in fact.
Good. John, you come up next.
John Estelle from...
Which John do you want?
Oh, John Estelle, sorry. J.E., not J.B.
John Estelle from Sailwave. Sailwave, is, I'm sure most of you have been around for 20 years now, and so it's used around the whole world. That's it. Scoring.
Okay. Right, it's your turn, John. Now.
Hello. Yeah, John Barber, Sailing Club Software. So you'll know us mainly for Duty Man, which is the duty and team management online service, which is in something like 300 clubs and similar organisations all around the world, mostly UK sailing clubs, but a good spread of others. Interestingly, in this context, it's being used a lot now for voluntary organisations handling the COVID response itself. So we've actually made the service free to anyone doing that, and we've had quite a big pickup on that. So that's quite interesting. So it manages teams and the other relevant service from us is newly launched, really completed its trials last year, Sail Event, which handles sort of the other aspects of handling a sailing event, but very interestingly, electronic tallying, entry lists in the cloud, online entry into those lists, and a simple form of GPS location.
Right, okay. Will, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Sorry I was a bit late. I had problems logging in.
All right.
That's my issue, though, I think. So, yeah, Will Parrott, keen dinghy sailor, recently come back to the sport after 8 to 10 years doing other things. I'm principal race officer at Delkey Siding Club, where we've just managed to rejuvenate the Firefly fleet, going from 0 to 15 boats in 9 months. Professionally, I work for a company called Honeywell, and I specifically specialise in primarily gas detection, but secondly, lone worker solutions, which I think what is relevant to perhaps some of these, some of what we're trying to do.
Right, okay. And just to complete the duo, for those who don't know me, so I'm Simon Lovesey, obviously organised the group, and in addition to organising sailing events, we run things like the Sailors Winter Series and the Great British Sailing Challenge. Have a big focus on GPS tracking and electronic tallies. So actually working with John, we provide all the tracking systems and tally systems for the techno class, which often see over 500 competitors around the world. sadly, not much of that happening this year, but hopefully coming up soon. So my focus is on basically tracking and electronic tallies. Right. So if we look at what I've outlined as the purpose of the group, I see it's sort of several fold. Firstly, identifying the areas from the COVID-19 guidance the RWA put out to see where technology could be applied, but then really following that through as a group to see how we feel technology could meet those requirements. And finally, really looking at specific products. So obviously there's a few product providers in this group. There are obviously other providers available. I think it's important to point out. So I think identifying and mapping those products in there. And a final part of that exercise is really seeing if those products need to be repurposed. So I think all of us have done some of that work already, but there's clearly some adaptations that need to be put into products to make them fit for the COVID-19 situation. And I think more importantly, we've been talking about this for a long time, but seeing if we can continue the work of working together. So the integration of data, passing of standards, open standards, clubs potentially want a basket of solutions. They don't want to go to one provider. They want to mix and match. And I think it's all in our interest that we all work together. Does that seem a fair sort of statement of really what we want to achieve?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thumbs up from John.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I think this meeting is quite short. I sent out a link to a Google document. I think John's seen it. I don't know if anyone else has seen it.
I have seen it, Simon. I had to request authorization.
Okay. Okay. Well, I might have to. Okay. Yep. Here we go. Jeremy Pocock requesting. Perhaps if others want to do that while we're talking. So what this is, I was trying to set up a template for us really to fill in as in our own sort of time. I don't know if that's come through now, Jeremy.
Yeah, I've got it now. Thanks.
Okay, Will's asked to go there. And I've just put in a bit an example of some of what we're working on, just as really as an example of how this might sort of be used. Wait for John and Peter to come through.
Okay.
But so I think a few of you got that document. But the starting point, I think, is that document. Have we all seen that? I think John Barber has.
Yeah.
We familiar with that one?
The RWA guidelines.
The RWA guidelines. I think it's 30. Well, how many pages? Are we familiar with that?
Ish.
Well, this was issued on the 12th of May and actually due to be reviewed on the 15th of May. So it could well be a new document out. But basically, this seems to be the Bible that the RWA are issuing to clubs. I don't know if anyone's gone through it in any depth, but it is quite detailed, but there's a lot of detail missing in it in terms of what to do. So, for example, I think John Barber picked on this. They mentioned about the need to register people visiting the club. I think that was right, wasn't it, John? I don't know if you got that out of here, did you?
Yeah, I thought there were two things for me that sprung out of that. Obviously, avoiding bottlenecks where people might huddle, and registering how many people are visiting. And it seems to me that our a number of sort of e-tally solutions would help with the first, and any sort of online entry would solve the second. Yeah.
So I think access control and, as John said, monitoring. Well, the number of people on site is going to be important, but also knowing who's on site. So, for example, if someone does go down with COVID-19, the club may have to identify those people on site, is my understanding. So if they've done a registration system, they would hopefully know who was on site during any period of time.
Yeah, I mean, the two things that I took away from that document and in fact our conversation, Simon, was one that in order to make sure that clubs aren't overwhelmed by having too many people on site, the idea of booking a slot, if you like, so that they could make sure that the club wasn't going to be overwhelmed by too many people, which would constrain various pinch points that there might be in the club. and secondly, being able to keep track of who is either on site at any time or who has been to the club at any time, such that there is the potential to perhaps inform people of the presence of someone who may have subsequently discovered they've been infected.
Yeah. So there was an interesting interview with the CEO of National Trust on the news today. They're obviously suffering with no one going, but they're planning to have a sort of, book your access time, even to go to the grounds, and even if you're a member. And I think we're going to increasingly see that to go into any public space, you'll probably have to register in advance and be authorised to go. So I think that's the first.
Your car parks now.
Sorry, say John.
You have to book the large car parks. You have to pre-book online before you can go to the National
Okay, where have you seen that? Oh, in National Trust,
Yeah. National Trust.
West Wittering down on the south coast here as well. They've employed a pre-booking process. I got the impression that was primarily to manage volume of people.
Yes, I think it's a volume, and well, I guess are they bothered about who's actually who's there? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that particular place has a problem with thousands and thousands of cars turning up and it getting to a point where it's running. So I think they're trying to mitigate that and just a mass rush of people so they can control it a little bit. But I mean, regards contact tracing, I know they were talking about an app for that, but are you going to have to register to go to the supermarket?
I don't actually. We have some experience, don't we, Jeremy, of this app, don't we?
Well, on the Isle of Wight, we are the test bed for the NHS's tracking app, which I have installed. It sits on my phone. I don't know whether it's doing anything at all, but in theory, it's as all of these tracking apps are supposed to do. It's meant to keep track of anyone that you have come into close contact with, such that if one of the people subsequently turns out to have or reports themselves as having symptoms or testing negative, positive, whichever way around it is, then you can then be informed and you can take appropriate actions like self-isolating or restricting what you do. Nothing, I mean, I've had, other than installing it and checking that it's on, I've had no further interaction with it. So it remains to see whether it works. I know there's some questions around the approach they've taken in terms of centralised or decentralised. And
This is a centralised app, isn't it?
This is the centralised version that the NHS have decided to do,
right?
Which means that they've had to sort of find some workaround to the way that the phones work, because the phones are not meant to allow apps to run in the background polling Bluetooth, local Bluetooth connections all the time. So, but apparently they've got around that rather than using the API that Apple and Google have created for that purpose. So apparently that's all in review now anyway. So it'll be interesting to see. But we are here on the island doing the best, leading the way for the rest of.
Well done. So you mentioned the Google and the Apple API. Has anyone had a look at those yet?
No.
Okay. So my understanding is that us as developers may be able to access that. Is that right?
Well, my understanding is that they are restricting the number of apps that can use that per country.
Okay.
So I think they set it up really so that there could be one track and trace solution globally, and in theory it should be each country's health service or governing body, as it were, would use that and have access to it. But some, I think some of the EU countries are going with it, some aren't. I don't know what's happening globally, but I think we'll see what happens. Everyone's sort of reviewing that. It kind of makes sense that everybody uses the same method, so that you can it can work when you travel.
Yeah. So I guess in the future it may be that we're developing sailing apps that actually are talking to the Google and the Apple APIs.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I say, I don't know whether they will allow that, because I think that is purely meant to be for the COVID crisis. I don't think it's meant to be in the sense of that API being available to track people all the time. Now, I think there are certainly apps can do things when they are in the forefront and being used for a specific activity, but having something that's tracking you all the time in the background is meant to be a special case, and that's why they've created this API specifically for that purpose.
Okay.
I think
so one to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just jump in there? Is that the tracking, or was that with respect to the Bluetooth you mentioned?
Well, it's not. It's meant to be.
Apps out there that do track in the background.
No, the Google and Apple API that they've created is meant to be to trace whether people come into contact with other people, such that they could be informed if they've come into contact with someone who's subsequently found to have the virus. It's not meant to be tracking what you're doing and where you're going. That's the whole point. So I think we should not. That's not going to be a solution to tracking people on the water, regardless.
No, but I saw it may be that we have to hook it up into it, yeah, in terms of.
Yeah, but I think there's going to be limited access to it, so I wouldn't expect many apps.
Okay.
So there are already apps out there that I'm aware of that are tracking people. Some of them come on when you turn your phone on automatically. You don't actually turn the app on. It automatically starts up in the background, and it is tracking you. And some of those, this is commercially, and some of those, someone could click into a web page and see where you are at any point. Some of those for specific industries where there are union concerns about location tracking, things like that. Some of those are such that the location can only be seen in the event of an emergency activated by the user. But there are apps out there that are tracing people, that are tracking people.
I mean, there's GPS tracking. The other tracking is just this thing where you're identifying whether you've come into close contact with another device, i.e. person. Doesn't matter. It doesn't really track necessarily where. Just the fact that you have come into close contact with another person.
Okay.
Hence the Bluetooth.
We'd be more interested in tracking. We'd be more interested in tracking who had been within a particular area.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking if we had an incident at a club that had been able to identify who had been in that area during a set period of time, could be a request that the club gets.
Yeah.
I mean, my understanding of the Google and Apple position is that normally they will not allow an app to access Bluetooth while it's running in the background.
Yeah.
Because that is what you would need to have something that's continually monitoring who.
Well, yes, and I think the NHS system had to hack that, didn't it, or something?
Something like that. Yeah.
To get around that. But all sorts of problems. Okay, so rather than sort of carry on, I mean, I think most people have now got the spreadsheet. Does that make sense of a sort of a format to work towards?
Yeah.
Can you authorise me, Simon?
Oh, sorry, I thought I had. Either hot.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Okay, fine.
Yep.
I mean, it's not necessarily set in stone, but I was just trying to give a framework for us to take away. Yeah, so that's what it looks like if you're not into it yet. Oh, John Barber's come back. So on the second column would be really extracting from the RWA document, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's really how technology could help, and then it's then following on what products are available and how we could work together. So really a 4-part process.
Okay.
Anyone got questions about that?
Have you got where's that? Have you got a link to that document, the RA document, anywhere, or I've got it?
It was in the email. I haven't got it to hand. If anyone got, you want to bring that document up, do you? Got the paper version.
Yeah.
Quite big.
Hello again, chaps. I'm afraid look, Hayling Island just fell off the internet there for a minute, but I seem to be back again now. So
Everyone's got back from sailing, John.
maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
So have you got the link to the spreadsheet, John? We were just trying to dissect the REA document into a spreadsheet. It was really the key.
Yeah,
key activity.
I've got that link. What were we talking about?
Well, I think the actions coming out of this meeting is really for all of us to go away with the REA document and try and find the sort of key technological aspects. So like the registering for people to go on site, that's one. I've put an example about simple racing and how tracking could help that, just as a boilerplate. So I think we probably don't.
Well, I think we've probably already done that, and we came to the conclusion that the two areas that we can make a contribution, a strong contribution, are the registering of people on site, which can be a super lightweight online entry system, which we can provide to anyone, no cost, no need to have any other system in place. And following on from that, the electronic tally, so they can register they're going to come, and then they can tally via their phone and SMS messages and say they're actually there.
Yeah.
And then you know who you've got on site and who was planned for the session.
So what we need you to do, John, is to fill that in the spreadsheet, really. Starting from the left with what the REA are asking the clubs to do, through to how technology broadly could help, and then what your solution does to do that. And the final bit, I know we've had a discussion, is how we could perhaps all work together to make it even better.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, just to complete what I was going to say, and the other area where I think we can make a really useful input is it talks about finding out where there might be pinch points, people gathering. And the obvious one is the signing on sheet and the course information board, that sort of stuff. And the app that we use for the tallying, obviously tallying itself removes the need for them to go to a signing on sheet. But that app also takes them to either a photo or a document that the race officer puts up about the course. So what I'll do, I'll fill that spreadsheet in then to say we can do both of these things, zero cost, no requirement for you to have any other system in place at your club.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. And there's obviously other solutions in there as well. So we want to obviously broaden the scope of it. And this ultimately becomes a document that can be shared with the clubs as a sort of these are the areas that may help you.
Absolutely. Well, I can see the clubs that are already running a more sophisticated system, like Jeremy's, for example, and that's got things like booking built into it. And the obvious thing to do is just use that. There's no point in them installing something new. But I'm thinking of a little gravel pit in the Midlands that's got virtually nothing.
No, exactly.
The lightweight free service is just what they want, I think.
Yeah, so the document ends up being helpful to the club, so they can quickly say, we need to solve registration, control of people on site. Here's the 5 or so products that could fit the bill. This is where I get them from,
Yeah, I mean, it should be pretty easy, actually. It's one of those things that almost we've been ready for this, waiting for... I keep falling into using the awful phrase, the killer application, which is seriously... bad thing to call it at the moment, but we've been waiting for that impetus, really.
Yeah, well, that's right. This is the massive catalyst for the sailing world to take on technology. Most of this group here, we've been going a few years, haven't we? And it just needs some big focus, which I think we've now got. Unfortunately,
this is the nudge. So it's great, really. I think we can all just move in and help straight away, which is terrific. It feels good to be able to do it.
Yeah, good. Anyone else got any other comments? Okay, so what I suggest is we perhaps schedule a meeting next week, if that works for everyone, to review the spreadsheet,
Okay, that's good.
Sounds fine.
I'll update that. We're launching a slot booking and check-in feature next week, which will be available to all existing clubs and anyone else who needs it.
Yeah. And we ran our first simple race last night in Bowmore, which worked very well. Two boats went and raced the course. I was the race officer, but set a rubbish course, so I've been sacked. Basically, I took their marks and drew the course on a GPS system, and they raced around it, and the system chucked out the times. Unfortunately, although I knew the wind direction, I didn't know where all the holes in were. So I set a rather nasty course with lots of wind holes in it. But the next stage is, well, one of the lads is going out there in his aero and he's going to ping all the buoys. So basically you just sail up to the buoy and ping it on the GPS, and then that will build the database, and they can then run the race themselves without some crappy race officer sitting in handball.
So wouldn't it be useful if there was a drone that you could watch the race from, Simon? Well,
yeah, that'd be the next thing. And actually, talking of drones, I've been approached by a company called Mark Set Bot. I don't know if anyone's come across them.
Yeah, I've seen that. Maybe there's a couple of those now, where you've got a mark that will take itself to the position and keep itself on station.
Well, that's right. I mean, is this what the Extremes use, John? I think the America's Cups are using it, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm out of touch with them now, but they were certainly looking at it when I was still working with them.
Yeah, this is basically a little tender almost, which is all gyro controlled like a drone, and you just tell it the parameters and it holds station and you've got a course. So no mark layers needed.
Quite powerful in the Solent, but
yes, might run out of batteries. But yeah, these sort of crises bring these technologies along at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
They're an awful lot of money, those things.
Have you got one, Will?
No, a friend was talking about it last night. I think he told me he'd heard in the region of £10,000.
Really? Wow.
It makes me wonder why you couldn't just have a drone hovering a foot above the water.
Yeah.
And that's your mark.
Until someone grabs it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, or hits it, but make the blade sharp enough, and they wouldn't want to.
Yeah, but interesting you say it's that sort of money, but the company's been doing a cost-benefit analysis of it and looking. I mean, I know John and I have been trying to do this to work out how much a rib costs, haven't we?
Yeah.
But they've been trying to work out, how much does it cost to send a rib out there compared to the cost of their system.
Yeah.
But then driven by we don't need people in there socially distancing.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost getting a nexus of a lot of things happening in sailing. So the cost of the rib is quite low while you've got volunteer drivers and crews, but we're also seeing the volunteering model beginning to come apart, and clubs realising they're going to have to go to a more professional model. As soon as they do that, they've got to pay for drivers and crews. As soon as they do that, the technology starts to get more affordable to avoid the rib altogether. So it's almost like we've got all the ducks lining up suddenly at long last.
Yeah, quack. But interesting, you talked about volunteering. I don't know if you're getting this through Duty Man. I'm sort of hearing that clubs are worried about the volunteers coming back. There seem to be no issues about sailors going back, but a lot of clubs saying they're getting pushed back from the volunteers. They just don't want to be anywhere near people. Yeah, are you seeing that in Duty Man?
Yeah, because we can see a lot of that data. I haven't actually talked to any clubs specifically about it, but we can see it, that they, because Duty Man gives them the option of cancelling an event, but keeping the event alive, hidden away to be prompted down at another date. And they can either keep the volunteers in or out. But what's happening is the volunteers just dropping out of it. Sorry, have you lost the sound there? Something's got. Yeah,
I can hear you.
Yeah. The volunteers are dropping out and finding they can't do the next date the club wants to put the thing in. So they've done their duty and signed up, and then the club moves the event, and they go, "I can't make that date." Now, whether they can or not, I don't know. But the point is, there's a lot of gaps appearing.
So I think this could be a big issue. Yeah, I mean, we're involved in a few national championships, and they're confident they're going to get the sailors there, but they're struggling to fill the duties.
Yeah,
especially on the committee boat, I would think, because it's quite a confined space on most committee boats, and if you've got 3 or 4 or 5 people out there, how can they self-isolate? Impossible.
Yeah,
and this again is where technology really can help.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Okay. So are we all right for the same time next week?
Okay. Yeah.
As good as any. I shall be at home.
Good. Anyone got any final thoughts before we sign off and then get to the spreadsheet?
I guess the ribs mean that dual purpose though, for safety as well, aren't they? As well as marketing.
Yeah. I think ribs and, as Peter said, committee boats are going to be quite a pinch point initially.
Yeah, I mean that I think is where there's a big intersect on the tracking. I mean the real high quality real time tracking like Sailwave does, for example, because you certainly can run with many fewer safety ribs to get your act together properly on that.
Well, yes, I mean we found that with round Hayling, didn't we, John? So
we did, yeah.
I mean,
you're only really interested in the boats in trouble, and the software can tell you that this dot has stopped for a while. Go and have a look at it. All the ones that are proceeding in a normal way. And we can't be far off algorithms that would tell us all these sailors are doing fine. This is the one you want to worry about.
Yeah. Well, in theory, yeah, we could output a list of those who've sort of stopped for more than a minute or so, and even which ribs are there. Yeah, I mean, talk about round Hayling, which has obviously been a test for some of this. Do you get a feel of how many more competitors you were able to bring in last year because of the technology?
Well, we in effect lifted the limit off it last year.
Yeah, I think we went to, what, 250, did we, from about 150? Yes,
exactly, yeah. But the point is with round Hayling, it's not so much the number of competitors, because that's really a measure of how busy you get. The problem is the nature of the course. The course is so big and
it's 14 miles long, isn't it? So
you couldn't. We really had to saturate it with ribs before we used tracking to make sure we had eyes on everybody.
Yeah.
Of course, suddenly with the tracking, once you trust it, you don't need that to see where people are in difficulty.
So you think we upscale by about a third because of tracking, or?
Yeah, I would think actually we'd have been nervous to run with more than about 50 before the tracking, because we've had tracking of that event for a few years now.
Yeah. And I hear talk of unlimited this year, possibly not, but yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, they won't turn up, will they, this year? But
well, you say that. September, we could be in a big release mode.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and of course, the club's now affiliated to British Canoeing, so we can take the lid off all the kayaks and canoes as well and have as many as we like.
I think there's a pent-up demand. I don't know when it's going to be released, but yeah, in terms of everyone's pushing their events into September, it appears at the moment.
Yeah,
it's going to be a very busy month.
Yeah, good. Okay, unless anyone's got any final thoughts, we'll sign off and see you in a week's time.
All right, see you next time.
Sorry, could I just say something, Simon? Sorry.
Yeah,
is there a group as well working on sort of health and safety policy and all that, risk assessment, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, there is. There's there's two. There's a safety group and there's a race management group. So we've got some of the experienced race officers from the RWA running that, and then there's a safety group. Okay. You're offering to get involved? I mean,
no. I was just interested that we had that covered, because I think that's going to be the key thing is, giving clubs the confidence that they can reduce numbers of safety boats, or the paperwork is there that such that they can reduce it. Some of the stuff I've seen on the forums about assumptions that people are making, it seems crazy. It's going to end up with no one on the water.
Well, yeah. So basically, there's something like 9 groups. I think you probably seen the list, from things like shoreside to technology here, through the media. Media is going to be important about communicating the message. As you say, Will, there's a lot of missed messages happening now. So there's a professional media group looking at how do we take these messages forward. So the idea is that each of these groups is focusing, and like us, coming up with some sort of output that can be used by clubs as a sort of crib sheet. But yeah, there's work happening there. Right.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks very much. Enjoy your weekends.
Cheerio.
Stay safe.
Cheerio.
Thanks.
Bye.